Yes.
I start to write, and then I get another idea, and then I start that, and then I get another idea, and I never go back to the old one.
Yeah, you see, that's when I do the post-it note thing. So I'll be writing my one thing, and then I'll get another idea, and I'll write that other idea on my post-it note, and then I'll go back to the first idea. So I think outlining, like plotting like that, get post-it notes. I love post-its, all different colors, they're awesome. Yeah. But also that's a really good thing. That's really creative. That way you do all kinds of. You know what else I do? I write something called zuhitsus, and they're like these poems of just all different thoughts that I have at a certain time. So this one is about when I was 16 years old, and I just write like one thought, then another thought, and they're really different. So that style of writing might actually be pretty interesting for you. It's kind of like when you make a collage out of pictures, making a collage out of words or out of thoughts and ideas.
How do you motivate, or how does someone motivate themselves to actually start writing? They say that they have an idea in their head.
Yeah, there are so many people that come to me or that come to GenZ and they say, I have a book in my head, I just haven't actually written it yet. And I think that one of the most important parts of that is outlining. There are two different types of writers. This is actually an idea by George R.R. Martin. He says there are two different types of writers. There are gardeners and there are architects. An architect will plan out every single detail of their book. They're going to make outlines. Their book will essentially be written before they type anything on the computer because they have all these outlines. You know, they have post-it notes everywhere, the whole thing. A gardener is just going to kind of start writing, just sprinkling seeds everywhere and seeing where it goes, where their words take them. I personally am a little bit of both. I have all my post-it notes all over, I have my chalkboard, but I don't plan every single little thing out. I like to almost surprise myself while I'm writing. So I think when you can make a detailed plan or figure out that you're the type of person that enjoys just sitting down and writing, that helps. Also not being afraid to write. That's a huge issue, deterring a lot of people from writing. They're afraid that nobody's gonna like their writing. They're afraid that their writing is no good. But when you can have the confidence to write and say, I'm writing for me, we'll see what happens with it. That's a huge part of getting motivated to write. Do we have any other questions?
Besides books, did you ever write anything else or write for anyone?
Yeah, it takes a lot of confidence to write a book. And something else that I want to say about the motivation was a lot of time people say, oh, I just don't have time to write. But I'm a firm believer that you can make time for anything. You know, if there's a night where I can't sleep, I'll just get up and start writing because you'll make that time for it. So I started out being a kid writing short stories. I found this story that I wrote about a pumpkin in 3rd grade and I got a B on it, which I wasn't very happy about. But so I would write all kinds of these short stories just about random things. I would write about puppies a lot. I'd write about monsters, everything, rainbows. I mean, really odd stories. And then I got a little bit older and I started writing about real things. I wrote a story, I don't know if anybody reads Discovery Girls magazine, that was like my favorite magazine.
I did for a while.
It's awesome, right? Yeah. I used to read that. I love Discovery Girls. And I used to dream about being in the magazine. So one time I tried to get in there and you know they have those 2-page stories with the real life stories. So I wrote about how I had Lyme disease and they wound up actually publishing that story. Yeah. Cool. And it was really awesome because I finally got to be in that magazine. So that motivated me. I mean, you need that kind of little motivation just to kind of make you keep going. And that was what really showed me, wow, I wrote something. I got letters from other girls saying, your story really motivated me in that magazine. Now I want to write. I want to inspire other girls. So after that, I started writing for a magazine called Junior Scholastic. And I would, every 2 weeks, write about current events. So I wasn't super into current events, but then I had to start watching the news. So I had to keep up with the president, and I had to keep up with all these different things. I wrote a story about how our backpacks were too heavy. I could write, yeah, they were. Your backpack is only supposed to be, yeah, right? Oh, I know. They're supposed to be 10% of your body weight, and mine was like 30 pounds. It was crazy. So I wrote a story about that, and I wasn't just writing about the president anymore. I was writing about things that were really affecting us in school. I wrote a story about pit bulls because pit bulls were being unfairly targeted. People don't like pit bulls, they're mean dogs, but I think all dogs are nice. So I wrote a story about how all dogs are actually nice, like give pit bulls a break. And then after that, I started writing books. And the first book I wrote was about these 3 little girls who enter a talent competition, and I didn't have the confidence to publish it. I wrote it for myself. But then the next book that I wrote about contests. I love contests. I'm very competitive. It had started me doing dance competitions and pageants when I was a baby. So I always liked contests. So I wrote a book about contests, and that one I self-published. And I also broke the Guinness World Record that same week because I wanted to do something big to promote my book about contests. And
which record did you break?
I broke the Guinness World Record for making the world's longest chain of bracelets. I made all these bracelets that I'm wearing, I chained them together, and I made 1,100 bracelets, and I just chained them all like that, and I just made a giant chain, and we had to put it on one of those things that you put a hose on. So it was so long, and yeah, that was really fun. That first book was self-published, so I didn't get the recognition from people. It was like, oh, well, you just did that book yourself, okay. So then in college, I decided that I really wanted to publish a book for real. So I started working for a publishing company. And that publishing company, I showed them my book. And I said, this is a book I've been working on. It's like creative nonfiction. It had poetry in it. It had short stories. It was a lot of stuff about me. It was about growing up. And the publishing company decided to publish it. And it became a bestseller for school-age children. And when I published that, a lot of kids started asking, how did you publish a book so young? I want to publish a book, and you know, it's really tough for people to get published. So I started my company GenZ Publishing, where we publish young people, we publish young writers. And to start that off, I also wrote this book, Writing for the New Generation, which it gives writing advice to young people and to all people looking to have a book out there on how to write for the new generation. Do you have any more questions? Yes.
I wrote a story. I think I got to around 110 pages, and then I just got really sick of it. I've been writing this for about 5 months. It was a story that I was really excited about at first, and after I got that far, I was just done with it. So I've gotten into poetry. That way I can write shorter things, 1 to 5 pages at most, and then I can move on. What's your, have you experienced things like that where you've been working on something for so long that you're just done with it?
Totally. 100%. Before I started writing the contest book, I was writing this really creepy story. I was really into horror movies. I love the movie Saw. It's a horrible horror movie, but I was really into that. So I wanted to write a story just like Saw, and I outlined some of it, but most of it I was just gardening along, just writing as I could, and then I thought, well, people don't like Saw. Nobody's gonna like this story, and I got sick of it, and I put it on the back burner. But I kind of wish I didn't, because I think that the story could have been really good. And I got rid of the computer and the USB that was on, so I don't have it anymore. Yeah, I would have really liked to read that now. Now I think maybe I just didn't have the confidence. Maybe it actually was good. So I think that if you step away from what you're writing, how long ago were you writing it? Was it
a week or 2 ago?
Yes. Maybe step away from it for a couple weeks, maybe a month, and then reread it. That's what I do. I like rereading my old work, and as much a critic as you can be, sometimes you also go, wow, it's really not as bad as I thought it was. Or maybe have somebody else read it. That's really scary, but that also helps a lot. When somebody else goes, yeah.
I was in 4th grade and we had an assignment. I wrote a story about vampires. I was obsessed with vampires, still am. But I let all my friends read it. They all thought it was the most wonderful thing. And I read it again and I'm like, this has no plot whatsoever.
Yeah, but when you hear that, when your friends either give you that, like, wow, this is really good, or if they say, I think you could do this, that helps a lot. As for the poetry, I think writing 2 things at once is awesome. Like, if I'm getting tired of that book that I'm writing, I'll start writing poetry, because it's a very different thing. You use a different part of your brain when you're writing poetry. I find poetry pretty relaxing. Yeah, that's really fun. And then if you build up enough poetry, you can make that into a book, or
like a novel in verse.
Yeah, exactly.
I read one of those for school for language arts.
Yeah, those are all, like, you're probably gonna read Beowulf. It's a good one. It's an epic. It's a whole book just written in verse. It's awesome, but it's about like a fight between these really strong guys. It's awesome. Yeah, so you can make a book into it, but you don't have to have all your poems go together. You can have poems on completely different topics too. You could have like one poem about dogs and the next one about flowers. I mean, it really doesn't matter, as long as they're all in your voice. Also, if you like have a blog, that's huge. You can like write poetry, put it on your blog. I know a lot of writer friends where they'll put maybe 2 verses of a poem on their Twitter, and say go on my blog and people will see that, or on Facebook. Facebook now has where you can put articles right on there. You can put a poem as an article.
Okay, this is kind of random, but I'm a big fan of Edgar Allan Poe, so I've been reading that for a while, and I've been writing kind of dark, insightful poetry, and I feel like it's like, it sounds ridiculous being that I'm 13, but it sounds like serious and kind of sad, and some of the people would want to read. And then one day I was not feeling it, so I started writing something a bit more optimistic, and it just seemed ridiculous to me. Like, I had no way that I could write optimistic poetry and have it sound serious and something that was mature and worth reading.
Yeah.
It just seemed ridiculous.
You have to write in your own voice. When you try to be somebody else, I mean, it's great to write a character who's not like yourself. I've done it before where I've written a character kind of opposite of me, but if you're writing poetry or something from the heart, you do need to do it for yourself. You need to write in your own voice. You know, I wouldn't write about something I didn't know about. Like, I wouldn't write about living on a farm. I didn't live on a farm, so I wouldn't know how to write that. It's the same way with that. If you like writing something darker, writing something lighter, yeah, it's difficult, and you might want to establish your voice and keep writing the Poe style.
Do you consider fan fiction to be real, like, literature and books and whatnot?
Yeah, I think it gets a bad rap.
I thought so too. I just started reading it, and I mean, of course, some stuff is just like random, completely terrible smut, but then there's like really things that have real plots and real things, and people think fan fiction is not. It was my first writing art form.
Yeah, no, it gets a bad rap, but it's still writing, and there, you know, a lot of books actually started out, or even some movies have started out as fan fiction, and I think every writing deserves something. You know, you may say that one type of writing is better than another, but they're all writing, they're all adding to our collective
I recently
intelligence.
learned that 50 Shades of Grey started out as a Twilight fan fiction.
See, I
don't know what
I wasn't gonna say it, but yes.
Sorry, was I not supposed to say that?
Yeah.
I just could not believe that when I figured it out. The success of that book and popularity is so big, and it was a fan fiction.
Yeah. Do you have anybody?
Okay, so let's all give Morissa an applause for coming in and talking about her book and answering our questions. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So now we're going to start our writing workshop.